Good evening. This is Louis Brandmeier. I am one of the hosts of our lovely and amazing podcast, Clever Orbits. I'm here with Tyler and Richard. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, this is Richard.
This is Tyler.
Oh, well, that's great. For those of you who've been listening before, probably we don't need to do introductions every time. I just realized this.
I think it helps.
I think it's a more comprehensive moral failure on my part, Richard.
That's possible.
Richard has a playbook of classic jokes that we will assuredly address in the course of this podcast. However, today we are addressing Scorpion Part 2, the first episode of Season 4 of Star Trek Voyager, which until I watched it today was one of my favorite, beloved episodes. And after today, it has become one of those episodes that, well, it's kind of cool, but I see all the issues that I didn't see because I'm finally thinking about it as I watch it.
Yeah? I like
what
Part 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Why so?
There was a lot more, interesting stuff. We actually learned some stuff about species 8472. Before they were just CGI praying mantises. Now they live in this space that's made out of DNA, so that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. They've got a really dense genetic code.
Yeah, that part wasn't a little not convincing because trees also have very dense genetic codes compared to animals, and it's doesn't make them, infectious superorganisms.
Oh, but wait, what? What has really dense genetic codes?
Trees. Plants. Plants all have much more dense, long genetic codes than animals.
Interesting. I wonder how viruses compare. Are they even more complex or less?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We need to get a scientific consultant. I think that would be helpful. But, who here liked the eyes? The species 8472 eyes. I thought that was one of the most beautiful things ever done in sci-fi.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just weird and new and different. I mean, their faces, when you really pay attention to the face of species 8472, it's not too interesting and surprising. I mean, it is clearly they spent some time on it, but the eyes I've never seen anywhere else. Anything quite like those.
Like a slit, like a cat's eyes, it goes off on the side too.
Yeah,
it's a big plus. Their pupil's a big
just
plus.
Just alien enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Their irises are pluses, which, it's even a question whether or not in fluidic space they need eyes. I mean, if you're swimming through, I guess if you're swimming through fluid all the time, do you really need eyes? Is it that special? But
sure, fish have eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then there you go. Yeah. So I think species 8472 is cool. I think they're good enough. They don't really need to be the Shadows in order to be an interesting villain.
I think they're. They're still not as intellectually interesting as the Borg, but they're cool enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And part of that, I think, is because there's more material for the Borg. We've worked for a while to develop an understanding of them. What you pay attention to becomes more interesting and takes up more neural real estate in your brain and gets developed in a more robust way. So,
it's almost like you're being assimilated.
Kind of, by the incorporation of it's more like you're assimilating something else, right? Because you're taking something in and you're paying attention to it, you're making it more. But, while we're on species 8472, I like the psychic invasion. I like that thing that they do with Kes. I think
we haven't really seen malevolent psychics except in that Next Generation episode with the evil Betazoid. That's something that Babylon 5 did really well and in a really good, creepy way, and so it's nice to see that sort of leaking into Star Trek.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in Babylon 5 they were even more nuanced than just malevolent ones. Like, you had Vester, right?
Of course, yeah.
And it was a kind of a gray issue for the whole thing, because with Vester, you had this idea that he's the you didn't see this episode of season 5, I know, because you kind of left when Garibaldi turned alcoholic, but which is understandable. I mean, like, there's so many really sad episodes where he's just drunk. But actually, there's only like 2. Never mind. But there was an episode portraying the inside of Psi-Corps, and you really get things from Bester's point of view, and you really understand that, oh, he's not evil. He's just doing the best that he can to serve the people that he's been tasked to pay attention to. So anyway, there's some subtle telepathic exploration that happens in B5 that we really didn't get here in Star Trek, which that was because the telepaths weren't very well developed, and there also wasn't much conflict between telepaths and normals in the Star Trek universe. I mean, they were kind of incorporated. You know, Betazoids, Vulcans, Deltans were a little bit telepathic. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I like the use of telepathy here, and I think there could have been more interesting things they could have done with 8472, but they just didn't. It's fine. I mean, they come from this whole nother alternate dimension. Fluid space is the most different from any alternate dimension we've seen on Star Trek. Like, it's even maybe got to be on somebody's top 10 list for best alternate dimensions altogether, like proposed in sci-fi, because it's so distinct. We have a universe that's mostly empty space, and fluidic space is a universe that's mostly organic matter, if not probably all.
Yeah, it's a really tantalizing idea that they don't really do anything with, but it's a good tantalizing idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the outline of an idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, occasionally with Star Trek you see these sort of glimpses of something they, like worlds and species they can interact with which are beyond just new foreheads, like the Borg with their scary cube shape and fluidic space, these like sort of fundamentally different things. And they don't seem to be really able to sustain that, but you occasionally get glimpses of the sort of next level of alienness.
Yeah, it's probably an issue with the medium, really, that you only have so much time to develop a complex, interesting idea or character or species, and that's and between episodes, and you've got to produce a certain number of episodes per season. So I mean, like, yeah, I wish television were or we could start constituting, and they've made this move with Discovery. Like, Discovery's got 15 episodes, 7 per 5-month period, and they're going to be released like weekly. So like there's a sense of taking their time, and this actually really explains why they, kept pushing it back, because they really took their time in developing every facet and aspect of the story and the characters and the world, and they wanted it to look right. And so I'm hoping there's richness and a depth to that we even might not have gotten in previous Star Trek series. That's part of the excitement of Discovery. A lot of people are afraid that, if Discovery fails, then Star Trek's dead. Because we haven't had another...
It's never going to be dead. Are you kidding me?
Not so long.
It's
not so long
never going to die. Doesn't matter.
Maybe,
Rabid fan base.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, we'll bring it back, right? We've done this before. We can handle this. We've done this before twice, guys. In the 60s, Star Trek fans brought Trek back for the 3rd season. In the 70s, 3 times. In the 70s, they brought it back as a motion picture. And now, after Enterprise, we bounced back more quickly, actually. So, anyway, Tyler, what were your initial thoughts on this episode? What was your, overall impression? Do you like it now that you're looking into it a little deeper, or... I mean, I think you always liked it, right?
I did. It wrapped things up into almost a neat little bow, save for 7 of 9's story, because her character has a big moment. She has bigger moments in the following episode of the season. But as far as enemies go, they figure out how to subdue the 8472. They figure out, predictably, hey, the Borg are just going to betray us as soon as we help them. And they find a way to not let that happen. And there's a lot of cool things, little devices here and there. And kind of love the way that Harry Kim sort of seems relieved in that one eye that's now free after the Doctor begins to help him. Yeah, so there's a lot of great performances all around. And I especially love Jerry Ryan. Yeah.
I like the part where he's like full on relieved when he returns to the bridge, you know? Like,
yeah, that
and
was
then
another great moment.
like treats him like a jerk, or B'Elanna's like a jerk to him.
Well, naturally.
I mean, she was really a mean character. I never realized how mean she was until I like looked back, but she was like kind of an asshole to everybody.
B'Elanna Torres. I mean, it's just her, man.
Yeah.
Characters like that throughout the series, so like she's part Klingon, so it doesn't really.
Hey Tyler.
Yeah.
What do you think of the 8472's performance? Do you think that was spot on?
I have no rubric to compare that against. No. As far as an alien species, yes, they seem to take their cues quite well. They're easily directed.
The facial expressions. We get like a couple facial expressions from 8472 in this episode, and they're really alien. Like when they're interacting with Tess.
Eyes especially expressive. When you brought that up, I thought, yeah, there's expressiveness in those eyes, of course, based on how the pupils are dilating and constricting. But yeah, there were moments when I'm like, oh, I think it looks happy. Or it looks sad. It looks sad, I think. I can't tell.
Yeah, that's something that I think they did well with Species 8472 that's completely distinct from even the Borg, and maybe even better than most alien species, is like they have a unique expressiveness, and, you know, we don't even need to know what's going on when they make those slight, very subtle facial expressions and eye movements and such. Like, all we need to know is that they are responding to the situation in whatever way that they do, in order to know, hey, yeah, there's some sort of alien thought process and alien communication that's going on, you know?
Precisely, yeah. You can definitely see that in their faces. They're telepathic in nature, so they're always, yeah.
Speaking of that, there's a really interesting issue I want to bring up with you guys with 7 of 9. Now, we see that she has an introduction that's similar to the Borg Queen. Did you see that with all the pop, pop, pop?
Yeah, there's pomp and circumstance with her characters.
Do you think she's the same protocol as the Borg Queen?
I don't think she's the same protocol, but I think that, and here's the thing, I think that the Borg grant a certain level of autonomy and individuality, at least as kind of a masquerade, to drones in order to achieve their goals with specific groups.
That seems accurate.
So Locutus may have had his own extent of individual thought process, and maybe this is, and the Borg Queen seemed to in scenes react to information that was recorded and acknowledged by the collective in something that was not like instantaneous real time, and 7 of 9 did too. Like at first, Tuvok and Janeway are like, yeah, we don't think this is a good idea, and then 7 of 9 says something like, oh, that's just because you've got small minds, and then she like kind of glances upwards for a second, and then it looks like, all right, she engaged with the collective again, and then she comes back and says, no, but, you know, that's okay. We should basically go with your idea. You know, you remember that scene?
Yeah. She does seem to take time to consult the collective instead of just being a slave of the collective like everyone else.
Yeah, being an expression of the collective. So I think that combined with what Chakotay does later on, like the Borg set themselves up for a little bit of failure. Like that kind of set her a little free from the collective, she's still got a really viscerally strong, I like to think, kind of standard issue Borg drone personality. I think each drone has their innate personality, and then they get imprinted with a Borg standard operating personality, like that's super efficient, that's super rigid, logical, linear, and rational, to an absurd degree that kind of annihilates all personality quirks. We know that their emotions are regulated by the cortical node or whatever that thing is from season 7. You know what I'm talking about, Tyler, right?
I believe I do, if I remember correctly.
Later on, there's this big hubbub about 7 of 9 doing the episode. I think is called Human Error or maybe Imperfection. I don't remember. She's experimenting with the Chakotay hologram, and she's going out on dates on the holodeck, and she starts to experience physical symptoms because her brain is locking down because she's having emotions that as a Borg drone she wasn't supposed to have. So she's still got this node inside of her. So I think it's an interesting question, how much personality each drone has, and also where the designations come from too. I think Locutus was designated as a function, the Borg have this function of wanting to assimilate humanity, and they think the best way to do it is to steal one of your people and get him to talk to you, which honestly was a really dumb idea. I mean, aside from acquiring his knowledge, which I think was a really smart move, they're not going to respond better because you stole one of our people and now he's talking to us. That actually creeps us out. That actually disturbs us. We really don't like you even more now. So,
much worse.
Disturbance is irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. You get a lot of really cool Borg quips in this episode. I really loved. This was just awesome. Do you have a better idea? And then 7 of 9 says, "We are Borg," and it's just or how did you get this information? We are Borg naturally.
She says that a few times.
Yeah, and it's funny because of all the emotions that the Borg quelch in their drones, 7 of 9, and you can see it right here, and you can see it all throughout her character up until those episodes, and after those episodes a little bit, where she gets that cortical node dealt with so that she can express a full range of human emotions. They have a smugness that rivals 22nd century Vulcans. They feel superior to all other species, and it's clear that it's an emotion. So I thought it was weird that the Borg allow their drones to express that emotion. Maybe it's esprit de corps, but then you don't need esprit de corps when your individualism is quashed by programming, do you? What do you guys think about all that?
I think she says it as a way to intimidate people.
Yeah, the Borg are about intimidation. Yeah, so perhaps they allow her some maneuverability there.
Instead of if you come across as arrogant and smug, then people are going to, be intimidated.
Oh, so it was a function. It was a performance, basically.
I think that's the interpretation that coheres with what we know about the Borg.
I think they also do actually think that they are superior.
Yeah.
Enhance quality of life for all species.
That's right. They just want to raise quality of life.
Which is the biggest joke ever. I mean, I think the sounds on the Borg ship, their technology, are pretty cool, and the colors, the green and yellow. I wonder why green and yellow, why those colors are needed. We know from a set design standpoint that it looks cool, but in universe, what's a good reason for them to have those? I mean, they've got side pieces too, so they don't really need special lighting.
What does the color green make you think of?
Plants.
Yellow makes me think of vomit.
something more visceral.
Maybe the set designers were trying to evoke kind of disgust and like
something sickening.
Yeah, I mean the Borg already, especially in their post-first contact developed form, they look kind of dead, and they're kind of this disgusting like horror film villain.
Yeah,
so
they get grosser and grosser. In the first one, they don't really look that gross. They just look pale. They look kind of like cyberpunks or something.
Yeah, they're like painted.
They get grosser and grosser, and you get more and more close-ups on their veiny makeup.
Yeah, let me tell you, 7 of 9, like Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9, least attractive female ever. Like, I mean, at least in her initial
I don't know
form,
about that.
They did some interesting things with like trying to emphasize her breasts, and then they gave her like the outline of a six-pack or something. Why do all Borg have to have a six-pack? Like, it doesn't support them at all. It's not even clear that that's the most useful allocation of resources metabolically. So,
the Borg saw Batman and Robin, and they're like, let's give them nipples. I don't know. Maybe maybe they just wanted to have an aesthetic to their design, to their suits.
I did kind of like her eyepiece, 7 of 9's eyepiece. I felt like, especially in the last shot where you see her laying down on the table, like the way that the lights were blinking in and around her eyepiece, it kind of reminded me of an airplane. Like trying to make sure nobody bumps into you. Maybe that's why they have blinking lights and eyepieces, so that the Borg don't bump into each other.
It's like, hey, coming at high warp. We'll just letting you know, flashing light. Just move very slightly. Adjust your heading.
So, speaking of kind of funny parts, I liked when Janeway and Tuvok are down on the ground and the Borg are like about to assimilate them, like because they just think it's a good idea and will help things. For some reason, Tim Russ had such a strained expression. It was almost emotional. Like, he just like, he looked, I guess he just really did uncomfortable well, I guess.
Well, uncomfortable he was. Perhaps he has a relationship to what it means to be assimilated and how he doesn't want that at all.
He's got some unique thoughts. Yeah.
And perhaps his conclusion disturbed him, and it reflected in his face.
Maybe he's so scared of the Borg that he lets down his emotional guard just a little bit.
That makes sense. It's a taxing physical situation, too.
Yeah.
Honestly, two things about Tuvok. When he gets emotional, it's actually, or when Tim Russ gets emotional as Tuvok, it's really delightful to see. Like, it's really well done. I mean, he definitely clearly follows that school of thought from, playing a Vulcan, where you're not playing somebody without emotions, you're playing somebody with a lot of emotions roiling beneath the surface that you're working hard to control. And, episodes like Meld, where he, with Lon Suter, the murderer, that he kind of takes on the murderous tendencies of for a second, or that's the only real example I can think of. But the other thing about Tuvok is he's a Vulcan tactical officer. I mean, like, how cool is that? It took a couple series before they figured out that would be a fun angle to play, but I think it's really cool to contrast him with Worf. Like, Worf is kind of like does it for the thrill of it and is excited by combat and all about honor in fighting and victory, whereas Tuvok, like, he approaches it as a strategic kind of chess master thinker, like he's trying to figure out 3 moves ahead, and he's also trying to do everything really efficiently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he does a good job calling out the shield percentages.
As any Vulcan should. Any tactically assigned Vulcan.
That was something that I liked about this episode. You didn't really get shield percentages. You just get shields gone. Like suddenly shields and weapons are gone. It was nice. It was a nice counterpoint to our usual shield percentage things. So, well, the question that I have that I think is probably a little interesting is why did the Borg choose 7 of 9 rather than the Borg Queen? I mean, maybe they were just like, this is. I mean, it's probably the Borg's highest priority to save themselves and to figure out what this information Voyager is and how they can use it through their new alliance. So go ahead. You had an answer, Tyler?
Well, I'm not sure if you find this out in Scorpion Part 2 or if you find this out in the following episode, but 7 of 9 was human. She was human before she was assimilated.
We find that out in this episode.
All right, so she's human. Perhaps they find it, perhaps they have a human captain. Maybe we should provide them with someone who may, in some ways, appear less threatening because they're human, or just if they need to really conduct any sort of diplomatic relations, which just seems asinine. The Borg, why? Just assimilate them.
Then that also suggests that the Borg Queen might have been human. Like at least the first contact Borg Queen. I think later on we find that the Borg Queen played by Susanna Thompson or the Borg Queen in Unimatrix Zero or Endgame, I think those are supposedly from species 139 or 246 or some short number. But that does make sense for this. My question then becomes like, okay, so if it's about ease of diplomatic conversation, if it's about, which the Borg, of course, are not good at diplomacy, incidentally. And
why bother?
Yeah, why bother, number one. Number two, like, why all the pomp and circumstance of her, like, having all these popping, tubes separating from her if it's just about diplomacy? Like, it's either about intimidation or it's about diplomacy. What's that?
It highlights her physique.
That's right. The camera needed to capture every angle. Needed to see Jerry Ryan in full Borg getup.
Yeah, so. I thought that was interesting, right? For a really profoundly ugly Borg, the makeup and costume designers went to really great lengths to still do their best to emphasize her feminine features. And it was just kind of like, well, wait, guys. I mean, she's pretty profoundly ugly. Just let her be ugly as a Borg for a second so we see the distinction later. But I don't know. I guess they were really trying to milk the fact that they had somebody who was attractive.
I think
perhaps. Yeah, because her character becomes a lot more important. Wonder if that information was available to fans. Jerry Ryan would be playing a much bigger part.
Yeah, I think I didn't pay attention to this, but I think her name may have been in the beginning credits, like the opening credits. So, which is kind of a silly spoiler. I mean,
yeah, well,
really
they're not
dumb.
good. They were, in the beginning of Best of Both Worlds Part 2, it says starring Captain, and starring Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard.
Stewart. Yeah, it's kind of like, well,
it should have said Patrick Stewart as Locutus, who's now going to be joining the crew.
It's funny that they didn't
Locutus from now on, guys. Used to be Picard.
It'll just be a wacky presence in the sick bay.
And it just breaks out his eyepiece. Yeah, at dinner.
Yeah, what if that would have been really funny if Riker stayed captain and Locutus was like liberated from the Borg, but he was still a Borg. I mean, that's
yammering about raising quality of life.
And I'm like, stop trying to.
Everybody will be assimilated.
Yeah, stop trying to assimilate Worf. All right, he's serving a very important function. Just come sit in your chair or your alcove. We'll build an alcove for him on the bridge.
This is us post 7 of 9, right? Looking back, because 7 of 9, when she came to the Voyager crew, she brought real conflict, which is something they didn't have for 3 years, like even with the Maquis. So, which they never used. And actually, if you listen to the 50-year mission, you hear that behind the scenes, Jerry Ryan and Kate Mulgrew freaking hated each other. They absolutely despised each other. Yeah, because like Janeway or Mulgrew felt like she kind of had the spotlight and most of the attention being the lead for the show. And when Jeri Ryan came on board, she's this model, and she starts to get a lot more screen time, and the show becomes a lot more about her. And so it's kind of like it was one of those movie star kind of things, mostly. But they were really mean to each other behind the scenes. So anyway, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves with that. I think so. I was asking myself, why does 7 of 9 get called 7 of 9? Like, what does that even mean? Who is 8 of 9? Who is 9 of 9?
Well, really, I think the problem is she says she's 7 of 9 tertiary adjunct Unimatrix, I guess 0-1. But
yeah, she does say that.
So those are all really small numbers, and there's a lot of Borg.
Right.
Well,
I believe there should have been a much longer designation.
Yeah,
like we'd probably take up 3 minutes.
Yeah, like 005683729411.
Yeah. There's probably
at least as long. Yeah, at least as long as Data's encryption code.
So like she's in a third adjunct to number matrix 0-1. So maybe there's a matrix 0-0, but maybe not. But it's still 0-1 really low. So it sounds like there's like maybe a dozen Borg.
No, actually, yeah. I mean, so that it sounds initially like there's something wrong with the designations, but Unimatrix 0-1 means that she basically works with the Borg Queen or something. First of all, Unimatrix 0-0 doesn't exist as far as the Borg Queen and conscious structure goes, but Unimatrix 0 is actually a informal designation for a place that Borg go when they sleep, and they regain their individual personalities, which is this whole really great. It might even be cool to skip ahead to that after we watch The Gift for next week, because it portrays like the Borg as having this unconscious expression of their personalities, and they all live in this kind of community. And when they wake up, they don't remember anything, but when they go back to sleep, they remember everything that they experienced previously when they were in that dream state, which is really weird. I can't wait to talk about that later, because Unimatrix 0, the fact that it exists at all is sort of really weird. It's this like viral accident in the collective. But anyway, here's my answer to the designations thing. Locutus got created for a purpose. So I think whenever the Borg have an initiative or a directive, they allocate resources, and the people are described as resources. So 3rd of 9 for this particular function, or 3rd of 5, right? So, I mean, It doesn't quite make sense to fit that together with the Unimatrix 0-1 or even the tertiary adjunct part. Like, what does that mean, tertiary adjunct? Like,
I don't know, but if there are 3 of them, it's not a lot.
Third helper? I mean, yeah, okay, you're still pushing the comedy.
I'm guessing that there's nine drones which constitute the tertiary adjunct.
Maybe. Yeah, that makes more sense. Of course, now we're really nitpicking here. This is like probably the least interesting question we could have pursued.
No, we're not nitpicking yet. There's another issue. So when they're talking about how long it would take to get to the nearest Borg cube, Cote says it's 40 light years away, and that would be a 5-day journey. So if the home is 70 years, which is 613,000 days, that implies a distance of 5 million light years, but they'll give you 100,000 light years across.
Okay, so you're saying the myths are pickable by virtue of scientific accuracy and validity. Well, that's what we're.
I'm just
really
saying the numbers
here.
don't add up.
They rarely do.
Oh. Yeah, I can't imagine in the series Bible them having like a well worked out system for referencing distances and times. I mean, they did have scientific consultants, but they didn't have like I don't know how serious they were about it. Anyway, okay. So there's some other cool stuff about this episode. Actually, a lot of other cool stuff than these little details. Not the most interesting details. One of the questions I had was, why do they only send one bioship to attack Voyager after they find out from Tess that some terrible stuff going on there. Like, that didn't make any sense at all. I mean, and you just saw 9 bioships attack a planet. I mean, the Borg cube that they're on isn't that far from a stronghold of 8472 with a lot of open singularities. So that was kind of a really big plot hole for me. I was just like really disappointed because, and you really can't go back to the level of suspense and drama to the end of the cliffhanger, because then, like, what are you going to do? Oh no, 9 bioships just blew up the cube and they're coming after us. Like how can you maintain the status quo of the show at that point? You really have to do something like Christopher Bennett did, where the ship just gets destroyed and there's no hope and the war proceeds on. So, I mean, like, I see how the writers were backed into a corner, but I also feel like, man, it was a mistake. It was a mistake to have the 8472 attack with only 1 ship.
Yeah, well, they made a tactical error. We all make tactical errors.
It just didn't seem like it was in their character.
Yeah, I also felt like, so let's just say they made maybe that's the explanation, 2 tactical errors. So first you only send 1 bioship, and then we know from the first scene of the first half of this episode that the Borg, which are pretty dangerous as a foe, like 1 shot from 1 8472 ship can annihilate a cube. And they do that here in this scene, but like pretty much, except it's not at the same intensity. Like, they don't blow up the cube, they like damage the cube. And I mean, maybe the 8472 are as like stingy with their resources as the Borg might be. Like, if something's a threat, they only fire enough energy to destroy it. Maybe they were aiming at Voyager, and so it impacted and damaged the cube a little less. I guess I've got my explanation for that plot hole. Thanks for letting me talk that one through. Yeah. And then the energy bolt through the cube. Go ahead, though. Go ahead.
I don't have anything to contribute.
Sure you do. You're why
yeah,
you're
same
here.
here. I can respond, but I need more information.
Like a good Borg. So
Affirmative.
The energy weapon that it damages or injures Janeway, I thought that was interesting. I thought, like, the fact that 8472 have this capacity to fire a weapon that dismantles the tech in a cube or a ship, or like impacts human nervous systems in that way. I mean, it must have been a weapon designed to damage organic tissue, really. And when we see it dancing across the technology, it was seeking organic tissue, which is why it damaged Janeway. Or maybe, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm just curious what the nature of that energy bolt was, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps it was a different kind of weapon.
Add that to the list of things that aren't really fleshed out about this species.
Yeah.
And maybe it didn't have to be. I mean, it's a plot point. It moves the plot forward. It does stuff for us, right? So
Yes.
what I didn't like was, as soon as Ensign Kim is healed and out of sickbay, we're right back in sickbay because Janeway's been injured. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys, don't you remember? You just had a scene where somebody was sick in sickbay, and I mean,
There's
it doesn't
more
really up the
excuses
ante.
to talk to the doctor. I mean,
Wait,
we
they
need
had
to
a bed
shine.
Also, go ahead. Yeah.
Because they had a bed free. You know, the bed frees up, now someone else comes in.
That's right. We need to keep these scenes going with the doctor. He's brilliant. Let him talk.
Well, he is brilliant, but the characters in the show don't realize this at this point. Like, they threaten to delete him, like, just as a casual, or Janeway does anyway. Actually, I think it's mostly Janeway who's, like, kind of doesn't treat him as a person, which I think is the most interesting, like, philosophical question of the series with him, is like, when does he actually become a person? When does he legit deserve the rights and privileges of a person and not just a tool? Because they basically treat him like a tool. They disrespect him at every turn. They tell him to turn himself off. Janeway kind of just implies, hey, doctor, ahem. And the doctor's like, oh, I need to turn myself off, which is actually also a really interesting thing. Like, to be a program, to be a conscious program, and maybe even sentient, like, to be able to consign yourself to oblivion for a period of time, isn't that freaking crazy? I mean, I'm going to turn myself off. I'm going to cease to exist for a while. Like, I'll exist as a, like, potential in the computer network. I mean, we get some insight into this from Sherlock Holmes, or the Moriarty character from TNG. He talks about, like, I had these brief, fleeting moments of absolute terror because I was just a program. Like, I was just these memory circuits. And I don't know. I think the Doctor actually, maybe they resolved that issue before Louis Zimmerman designed the Doctor. But, like, his experience and then his personhood. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, this episode doesn't really provide a lot of information on it, other than the fact that he readily agrees to delete himself at the first sign of any trouble. Not really.
Yeah, it's not.
Maybe not the first sign.
Maybe not the first sign. Yeah. So that there's a little sympathy there, but maybe, like, it's not really explored in this episode. The Doctor, they consider, perhaps they just consider the Borg too great a threat. And things are just, it's too large, the stakes are too large. So he's like, I'll happily, perhaps he considers it an honor to happily delete himself so that the Borg aren't given what they want.
Do you think the Doctor is glad to die?
Wait, say that again?
Maybe, yeah.
Do you think the Doctor is glad to die in combat?
I mean, he's got Leonard McCoy in him. Leonard McCoy probably would have given himself up. So
perhaps he's honorable like that. So maybe that's where that comes from. But I don't know. He doesn't explicitly state it, but yeah.
I also feel like, I mean, he's really good at what he does. He says, I'm 2 for 2, and actually, he's 3 for 2, man, because he coordinates with Chakotay at the end of the episode to basically disconnect 7 of 9 from the Borg Collective without her dying. So I really feel like he kind of deserves to be accorded individuality and respect because he's more than a tool. He improvises. Or maybe he's just a really good tool. I don't know. So I guess we won't talk about the Doctor, really. That's okay. But it's just like nobody cares.
You call him a tool.
Just like how the British crew doesn't care about him.
Yeah, we don't. We really don't. He's a hologram. Whatever.
What was this?
It's like, great job. You did your job. Thank you. Now turn yourself off.
I think I brought up this. This is like last week when I brought up this like deep ethical question. You guys were just like, I don't care. I think I might be interested in this show for very different reasons than you are.
It was an ethical question, but that happened when we weren't recording, so we should reproduce that interaction.
What, the ethical question?
Yeah, I don't remember what
precisely.
It was, but I don't know. Basically, Voyager is all about these ethical dilemmas, and I feel like a lot of them are really artificial. And for a lot of them, I'm just thinking, like, just do it, man. I don't care.
Oh, yeah, with the genocidal species, do you ally with one genocidal species to, like, stop another genocidal species? It's so specific.
Yeah, sure.
That it's almost trivial, that it is basically trivial. I mean, it's so unlikely to occur in real life. Like, this is one of those thought experiments that you won't encounter in even a philosophy textbook of ethics. Like, so, anyway, I thought the spinny move by the Borg cube was cool. You know what I'm talking about when they're fighting 8472 and the Borg cube spins that each new face is facing and shooting more torpedoes? I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
It looked good.
Wonderful feat.
Let's see.
Do you think
one
it's
of my
got
questions,
Janeway and... Go ahead.
One of my questions with when you see the Janeway and Tuvok beamed back to the ship, you see this one blue-suited, clearly a medic, and I wonder, like, why does the Voyager crew not have more medics? Like, we have talk of, like, Tom Paris being trained as a medic later, and we have Tess sort of trained a little bit, but, like, what if you lost the Doctor? You know, if you deleted the Doctor, that would be a real issue, because nobody knows as much medical knowledge as he does. and even later on, Tom Paris is trying to learn. I think it was in season 3. They're trying to program a like backup of the Doctor, and they fail miserably. So, like, anyway, go ahead. What are you guys going to say?
I agree. They'd be SOL. They'd be struggling to treat the most rudimentary of illnesses.
I mean, there's the sort of general sort of staffing issue at all these shows, which is like they've got hundreds of crew members. What are they doing? It seems like the only people that do anything useful are a handful of people.
Right. You don't see that anymore, like, more glaring than, I think, perhaps TNG. How many people are aboard the Enterprise D?
Like 1,000, right?
1,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many doctors are there?
There's probably a lot of doctors.
Well, there were several.
So it's kind of the opposite with Voyager, since there's not that many people.
Yeah,
and they're
Voyager's
stranded.
150 people. Like, Voyager has the absolute smallest crew of any series or ship that we really, I mean, except for the Equinox later on. Maybe the Equinox has got like 50. But, yeah. So.
Well, that's good.
They're all torpedo technicians, we think.
They're all pressing buttons.
They're the wizards. They're the wizards
producing
all the ammo.
3 seconds.
Yeah, well, they must be building torpedoes somehow. They're wizards about it. That's how they keep revising that number from the pilot.
Oh, I finally got your joke. I was just so lost. I was like, this is so dumb. Why are we talking about torpedo technicians? But no, maybe half the crew is always building torpedoes and building shuttlecraft. So maybe.
Hey, precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the thing. I liked the brief war scene between 8472 and the Borg. I thought that was well done. Was well depicted. Except the Borg weapons seem to be a little aimless. They seem to be like kind of aiming at nothing. Let's see. I liked two things that 7 of 9 talks about. One, she says she's given her speech to Chakotay. You lack harmony, cohesion, greatness, and it will be your undoing. I thought that was the first time the Borg really clearly distinguished their contempt for individuality. Like it's never been an active distaste. It's been a the collective is just more efficient in all of this. And again, maybe it's just intimidation, but they clearly distinguish themselves from individuals and think individuals function less well on their own than a collective, which maybe that's their whole quality of life thing. Maybe they feel like by virtue of being an individual, you get less done in your life. You accomplish less than you would if you were part of a collective.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a degree of force, just forcefulness.
What I find interesting, though, is that, I guess the episode is sort of setting up its central thesis to be that, no, 7 of 9 is wrong. And having individuality. It's like when Janeway and Chakotay are fighting, and they come to the conclusion, we can't have our individuality. We just need to stop fighting each other. I don't see how that revelation sort of lets them actually solve the problem, though.
Well, as we learn later, they think creatively, and both of them have their cake and eat it too. Janeway gets to pursue her solution of an alliance with the Borg, or at least attempting one, and we find out Chakotay was absolutely right the whole time. You couldn't have trusted them, and they have the backup plan set up. So, I think it's proven that individuality is better because you don't have to reduce the complexity of a situation to one final evaluation, or one point of view. You get multiple points of view on the same issue if individuality is retained. You may get kind of a resource allocation efficiency if you eliminate individual will and desire, but you lose the capacity for creativity that comes through independent thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well,
right.
So you're saying that it's because Chakotay and Janeway had this conflict that they were able to solve the problem, and the Borg would not have been able to solve the problem this way.
Like the Borg wouldn't have been able to find a compromise between several alternatives that they've determined are viable options to do things. But
I think that the Borg probably could have done this.
I think so too.
That's sort of I feel like the episode is trying to push this thesis that their individuality is what gets them through, but I don't really see how that's true.
I think it's a pro-Borg episode.
I think it is.
I didn't. Were you guys listening? I just gave you the answer. Creative thought.
Yeah, the Borg can be creative.
They can.
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
they're rigid about it.
Independent thought. Creative thought sustained by independent thinkers. Like that perspective, Voyager would have failed if it had just had Janeway's point of view. Like, just Janeway's point of view would have been this kind of naive trust of the Borg and hope. And, like, she would have been blinded. She would have been blinded to the possibility of them violating their agreement. Like, she really had a lot of faith in the Borg needs you, she says to Chakotay on what she thinks is her deathbed, which I thought was a really touching scene, by the way. Get this crew home. Hell, man, that was I felt like almost like crying because you could feel it in her voice. But no, like, she had her point of view, and it needed to continue to exist because otherwise they wouldn't have proceeded as far forward as they did. They wouldn't have stopped 8472. But also, Chakotay had to keep his voice intact. Like, he had to continue to protest, even past her saying, I need you to stop this. Like, I need you to stop disagreeing with me. Or, I'm really upset that you disagreed with me while I was under surgery. Like, why did you pursue your own desires? And, like, so that conflict was necessary for them to achieve the creative solution that came out of both of them retaining their individuality and in their points of view. Does that make sense?
I mean, the creative solution is just that they used Chakotay to sort of disrupt the link and then cut off the Borg link, right? I don't see why an individual couldn't have come up with that. And plus, I mean, I don't think the right comparison is just Voyager, where Janeway is the only authority, because the Borg don't have a single authority. It's everyone thinking together in unison. And if the Borg are allocating their resources efficiently, then they are going to be getting different perspectives, not from individual drones, but they'll be just trying to generate multiple hypotheses and choose the best one.
Okay.
Solution in general. So
yeah, because I was going to say the drones don't think by themselves. That would violate the collective. So
they don't, but it might be. They might decide that you're allocating computational resources to different hypotheses. It might be that you assign one to each drone, but that doesn't mean they're thinking individually, really. They're just multiple parallel cores in a parallel processing computer. But
I think I finally understand what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe the Borg are more efficient. Maybe we should all get assimilated. But then what's the point? Like,
yeah, the episode didn't really convince me not to become a Borg.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it just showed you that having emotions will make it take longer
to achieve something. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, so the other piece, other than Scorpion being a cool title, and me being really curious why the writers chose "Do It" to be Janeway's catchphrase, because we went one level deeper. Like last week we made fun of it, and now I'm wondering, like, why is that? Why did anyone ever think that was a good catchphrase for to repeat over and over? But okay. So before we go into this like last bit of kind of depth for the Borg, I think a lot of modifications to Voyager's hull happened in 2 hours. Like too many modifications. I don't believe that. I don't believe they were able to replicate that many Borg tech things unless 7 of 9 showed them some creative way of, like, using replicators, I don't know. I mean, it was
they
just
have
like,
a lot of drones.
No, they didn't. She was the only one left at that point.
Well, I don't
issue
know.
is,
I'm trying to stab in the dark here.
So Chakotay, when the Borg are modifying the ship, Chakotay clears out by evacuating all the air on a deck.
Yeah.
Like, isn't he going to kill dozens of people?
Oh, no, everybody, I'm sure they told everybody to leave that deck.
They didn't. I didn't hear anything like that. I think he just killed them in cold blood.
I don't think that happened. They would have made a big deal about it.
Right.
Also, when there's a part where they say we're about to go into a rough situation, they say everyone close the emergency bulkheads. Like I'm thinking it's like on the airplane where you got to close the overhead bins so your luggage doesn't fall out.
Well,
yeah,
there needs to be a backup to the backup.
Bulkheads?
So people have their luggage.
No, like, okay, never mind. You're not even going to try to find a legitimate reason why they have something called emergency bulkheads. That's fine. We'll just leave it.
It's a ship within a ship. If the ship within the ship gets broken, then the ship that's outside of the ship is still there. I have nothing.
Yeah,
this is going nowhere.
Yeah, I'm completely lost with what you're saying. Okay, so I like that Janeway kind of, I mean, I finally understand Janeway. I used to be upset at her for, like, removing Seven from the collective and then trying to foist individuality upon her, but rewatching this episode, I really get it. Like, they decided for their own survival to separate this individual from the technology that enabled her access to her community and her sense of self, namely 7 of 9. They separated her from the collective in order for them to survive. And so having been separated, she tells Chakotay, we're responsible for her now. Like, I think it's possible to bring her back as a human person. So, like, anyway, that's kind of, I feel, good justification for Janeway to do what she does in the next episode in being kind of mean to 7, but then, like, really trying to help her, too. So, anyway, speaking of 7 of 9, when 7 of 9 is talking about 8472, she adds this kind of new, interesting wrinkle to the aims of the Borg. She says their technology is biogenetically engineered, superior to all other technologies than we have encountered, and they are the apex of biological evolution, which makes it seem like they want technology, sure, and they want species who can augment their capacities, but it also sounds like they have a lot of respect for the process of biological things, like that they want those to subsist. So it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like maybe even contradictory to, like, in the New Order, you know, the artificial intelligence will rule 100%. Does that kind of make sense?
I think they want the best, whether it comes artificially or naturally. They just want to harvest all the best stuff and incorporate it and increase their perfection, as 7 of 9 says.
That opens another question. Okay, so that's good enough. That makes sense. And why are they assimilating all these species? Like, it seems like it's just expansion, but don't they need a reason beyond assimilation for existing? Like, what are they going to do once they become the best? Just walk around being the best? Hey, I'm the best, yo. I mean, like, what?
They won't attain it. They'll just keep on growing. It's a never-ending goal. It's like
it's a positive feedback mechanism.
It's like an enemy you can never defeat. It's a great motivation. Much better than one you could defeat.
Huh. Well,
that's why they reach fluidic space in the first place.
Huh. Or why they go to fluidic space, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, all I got to
Oh, yeah, we're almost done. I'm going to make a completely unrelated observation. Data makes a really great captain in Gambit Parts 1 and 2. All right, that's all I've got to say about this episode.
Oh, yes. More on that eventually, I hope.
I mean, he dresses Worf down. He does the Picard shirt tug. He makes really interesting command decisions. He clearly was paying attention when Picard was like ruling the ship, and I think that's actually the apex. I think that's the apex of Data's expression as a character. Like Data could command a ship, just Data. I mean, and he's really reasonable, really calm, collected, cool. So yeah, and then the movies just trash his character, which is sad.
Yeah, why? I hated that.
But yeah, anyway, so final
Starfleet
thoughts
should
on
just
this
be
episode.
Data.
There was a comic where I think they did that. It was just like holographic replications of Data, which is, anyway, all on one ship commanded by Geordi LaForge. Anyway,
wow, really?
Yeah, you should look it up online. It's really interesting. Anyway, there's final thoughts on this episode. I liked it. I think I give it a 8 out of 10. I mean, there's some what I still feel like are plot holes that I didn't see when I loved it in my youth. But yeah, 8 out of 10. It's a decent episode, not the best. A decent conclusion. I like the direction that they're going with 7 of 9. I think that's cool. Anyway, how about you guys?
8 out of 10 sounds good.
I'll go with 7 out of 9.
Nice.
Oh, well, yeah, that's kind of cheap. All right, so this was a good episode, I think. It was good to talk to you guys. Next week we'll come back with The Gift. And
good luck,
good night and good night.
Yeah, very good. Good day, sirs and madams.